Hi, happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Arms Bumanlag Project, broadcasting live on this fairly decent Friday evening. This is, believe it or not, episode 18, I think, of the project since we started going at the end of May. So very happy to have you along for the ride. My name is Arms. A couple of things, as always, you can catch us live tonight on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn and we're on Twitter. We're also broadcasting previously episodes of the show on our YouTube channel and on Anchor FM. You can download the full podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including on Apple Podcasts. Just search Arms Bumanlag. And as always, we recap who we talked to, who was on the show, what the topics were before we get to our welcomed guest. On this past Friday, we had the wonderful Greg Ginnett, formerly of 89X and 93.9 The River. Actually, tonight's a big night for Giff because he's back bartending here in Windsor, Essex. So you'll have to listen to that episode to find out where he's at. And then on Tuesday evening, we're going to speak with Laura Revate Spencer, a wonderful woman here in Windsor, Essex, who is doing a lot for sick children and really boosting their confidence. So I can't wait to share her story with you. She's an absolutely amazing lady, somebody that has done a lot for my family and families right across Windsor, Essex as well. So Laura's going to be on the show coming up on Tuesday. So tonight on the project, I always say that we have great guests. We have great people who really contribute to the community as a whole. I think my guest tonight certainly is probably one of the most hardest working, dedicated, and kindest people I've ever met in my life. She's very dedicated to the cause at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. She's a wonderful leader, very compassionate human being, and truly does care about the animals. I'm very happy, very excited to welcome our executive director from the Windsor Essex County Humane Society to talk a little bit more about the society, how she got her start, and all things animals here on the show tonight. Melanie Coulter, who is joining us live from the society this evening. Hi, Melanie. Always good to see you.
So good to see you. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Oh, my pleasure. And my God, I was going through some awards over the last couple of years and kind of going through sort of the old broadcast tenure things. And I found the plaque that you gave us at CTV back in 2012 for some of the work we were doing at Pet Picks at the time. And I thought, wow, like we've been working alongside each other for so long. And then we go back further than that. And I know you've been so heavily involved in the Humane Society. So I wanted to get this started. How did you get started at the Humane Society? How did you come to develop the society to where it is today?
Well, I did not actually intend to be here on staff. I was a member of the board and the executive director at the time who did some amazing things for the organization. He stepped in for what was supposed to be a really short-term period, a very chaotic period we were experiencing. And he ended up staying for, I think it was about 5 years. And he knew I was working for an environmental organization, but I was looking for something else. And he actually, I remember it so clearly, he said to me, "Have you ever thought of running a shelter?" And I said, "No, I have not," because I hadn't. But after he mentioned it, I thought, oh, I could do that. And then it just was something that really interested me. And fortunately, he and the board at the time had confidence in me to hire me and bring me on, and been here ever since. That was 2008. And so, yeah, I don't even want to think about how many years it was, but it was quite a few now.
And it goes by so quickly too, right? I mean, if you think of, I think my real first run-in, I wouldn't say run-in, but I guess getting to know this society, I go back to 2005. I was working with the AM 800A team at the time, long before I did anything on air. And we were doing a promo night at the barn for the Windsor Spitfires. And I think the society was teamed up at the point with Crime Stoppers. They were doing Buck-a-Puck. And I got to meet some of the folks there, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And, Humane Society, getting to know some of the ins and outs here in Windsor. But, you come in in 2008, and I mean, you've seen the growth. I remember when the clinic was up and running, and, we were fundraising for that, around 2010, 2011, all that was coming through the pipe. It's been a continuous stage, I guess, of growth for the Humane Society through whatever was coming, I guess, locally in terms of some of those issues.
It has been a really interesting time. I know we were, back when I started, John, the prior executive director, had really weathered some challenging times, brought us through some financial challenges we were having. And When I joined, we were financially more stable. We were doing better, and that he'd done a great job on. But we were still struggling with this challenge of so many animals and so much overpopulation, and especially cats. Just a huge number of cats coming in each year, more cats than there were homes for them, and it was something that people who work for the Humane Society love animals. And when you saw that overpopulation, it was heartbreaking. And so we looked at ways of how to address it and how can we make this difference. And really everything kept coming back to access to spay and neuter makes a difference. There's lots of other programs we've done. We've really grown our adoption program. Looking at our adoption numbers back then, we do these free adoption promotions, which you almost probably wouldn't have even thought of back then, because you can't give away animals for free, or people won't value them, or they'll feed them to snakes. And the reality is that people are coming to a shelter, and even if they're free, it doesn't mean they're not going to take care of them. It just means everybody likes a deal. And if you were thinking about bringing an animal in, maybe that's the nudge you need to say, this is the time. So looking at being open to some of those new ideas, different programs that are out there, like return to field type programs. I remember the first time I talked to another shelter about it, and I said, you can't do that. And then I was at a conference, which was a great educational opportunity. I heard a speaker who is an amazing shelter medicine expert. She talked about return to field and about the fact that when feral cats can't come into shelters, there are few options for them. These aren't stray cats. These aren't somebody's friendly house cats. These are feral cats that people usually bring in a trap, and they can't go up for adoption because they don't want to live on a couch. It would be like trying to put a raccoon in one of our adoption kennels. They would not be happy there. That's not the home they know. And really recognizing that they're coming to us in great body condition. They're obviously getting along really well. A huge majority of them have someone feeding them, whether we know it or not, because there's research out there that shows that a lot of people are feeding free roaming cats. So just fixing those cats and putting them back out there, as opposed to what all shelters did years ago, and putting those cats down, it makes a difference. It gives those cats an option to be released. And between those type of programs, between looking at transfers and working with other shelters that maybe have space at times, the same thing we do with other shelters when we have space, being able to move animals in and out. This year was interesting because we actually moved animals in from Chatham, and it was nice to be able to do that, because a lot of times this time of year we're asking other shelters farther up the 401 to take cats and to help us out, because they have more adopters waiting and we have a surplus. But sometimes we can take them in even, and that would have been unheard of back when I started, because there are just so many. But really what comes down, the biggest difference is that access to spay neuter. Our clinic opened in 2011, and all the research, we knew that was what we needed to do to turn that tide, to really make a difference in overpopulation. And it did. It, like, literally the first year our clinic opened, we saw a dramatic decrease in our intake. And that was after years of it going up every single year. The first year it went down was the first year our clinic opened. And that's, I cite that to anyone who's questioning whether they should be constructing a spay neuter clinic, offering high volume services in their community. It makes a difference, and it's really continued to make a difference. So the number, our intake of cats has gone down. It's still, this time of year, it feels like there's so many out there, because cats reproduce a lot. That's how they thrive. They have large litters. And so it can be a challenge, but definitely we're in such a different place from where we were back then, and some really exciting things still to come.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I've always said in my life that, you know, when people really care, it shows, right? And I think that your outlook on the shelter and the people who make it what it is, and the animals coming in and the care, like you see it. And I know we were walking through today with some of the folks at Paramed, and you get to see that kind of passion that sort of permeates through the community too. I think, you know, especially in today's day and age, I think people like to hear good news stories. And I think that's one of the best things that, among other things that the shelter does, is that we're able to provide those personalized good news stories, finding good fits for folks here locally too. I mean, you hear so many of those stories that, people coming in, I had a dog from you guys back then, or, I was able to get a cat for my kids. And
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be very gratifying, I would think, to see that family building essentially that's happening here locally.
Everybody who works here, if people hear you work at the Humane Society, every one of us have heard probably 100 times, I got my cat from there. His name was Fluffy. Do you remember him? And the funny thing is a lot of times we will remember exactly who that is, because so many animals stand out. There are thousands of them, but there's a lot of those animals who were with us a while, or who just had a really hard story when they came in, and to hear them and say, oh my goodness, how is he doing? I would love to see a photo of how he's doing, and sharing that is really so great to see. And it is, sometimes there's hard days when you see sad cases and animals that have been let down by people, but seeing those happy stories and seeing people come in and how much they love their pets, and just they're so excited about the animals that they've been able to work with us to obtain, and in some cases now animals that we've been able to help keep them with through various other programs that we're offering is just really a great thing to see. And I think it's important to remember that the Humane Society is here for our community's animals, but not just for our community's animals, because animals, like you said, animals and people are so connected. And when we're helping animals, we are really helping make families and keep families together, and create those relationships that sometimes really keep people going. So yeah, it's great. It's heartwarming. A lot of people say, oh, I could never do that. But the reality is that we're here because of those great happy endings that we're a part of.
Melanie Coulter is my guest here on the Arms Bumanlag Project on this Friday evening. Very happy to have her on the show. You can comment. We are taking your comments in the feed. We've got one here from Debbie saying, LOL, I actually did get my cat from there 14 years ago. She was in a cage with her 3 siblings, all H names. Her name was Harmony. And then we changed her name to Sparkles. And I don't know, honestly, like ever since I started working with you guys officially, I don't know how you keep track of the names. like this cat comes in as this, and then it's that, and then I'm just like, oh, okay, it's always fun to see the names, and then at some point you're probably like, okay, we have to think of a cool name or something unique for this particular animal, right?
Yes, and I have a little bit of a reputation for coming up with some strange names. I'm just going to say they're creative names, but it is not an infrequent occasion that someone says to me, did you name this animal? Because this is definitely one of your names. But that's how they get attention.
What do you think was the most off the wall name, if you could recall, that you were like probably like, this is going to be good, and then people are like, maybe it's not, but you were like, this is like, oh, great.
There's been, I mean, my more recent ones were my eager math teacher and sensitive guidance counselor, which I somehow got a lot of flack for. I don't know why. But there was one, I think it was Electric Kool-Aid, that was really actually quite popular, even though it was somewhat unique. So it's one of those things that I think you can only name so many animals Bella before you say, we got to come up with something new. And so my when I'm naming animals and putting them up on the website, I want people to be drawn to them. If they see a cool name that makes them look at it. And the funny thing is we'll come up with the best names, and we'll think, this is a perfect name for this animal. And then the people take them home and they say, oh yeah, we're going to name him Buddy. And we're like, wait, we picked the perfect name, and okay, great, he's your dog, you name him Buddy. But then other times people will come up with super creative names. So you never know. And people sometimes worry that, oh, I can't change the name because they won't know it. The reality is, doesn't matter if it's a dog or a cat, you can change their name if you want to. We are fine if you change their name, and they are fine personally. You offer them some treats, attach that with their name. They will recognize that that's their name. And even it's funny because I one of my animals came to us. He was rescued from a large rescue in Quebec, and he came with the name George, and that's my husband's name. And so I quickly realized that this was not going to work, and I was not going to call him George, and he needed another name. But my husband still calls him George, and so he will turn around if he says George, he'll turn around like, "Oh, are you calling me?" But if I say George, he won't. So dogs are smart. Animals are smart enough to even recognize that they can have two different names. Lots of people have more than that for their pets. So for sure, if people want to change their names, we're quite open to that, and animals are too.
Oh, that's hilarious. And kudos, we should give a shout out to your husband George, because I mean, George is awesome. I know he's very supportive, but he's also very hands-on with even helping us out. He was there for our doggy bag delivery, and I know at a moment's notice he's able to help out the entire team. So great guy. Awesome dude.
He
Awesome dude.
gets voluntold to do a lot, but he's a trooper about it. I'll say, "Hey, do you want to go pick up some puppies for us from out of town?" And he'll say, "How many?" "Oh, only 7." And he'll do it, and he's a great sport about it. So yeah, I definitely couldn't do it without his support. It really makes a difference.
Speaking of getting dogs from out of town, one of the things that we sort of broke on our live stream that we do on a weekly basis on the Humane Society social channels is our pet pick segment. And we talked about a pretty big initiative that's coming down the pipe pretty quickly. Just for the folks who may have not caught that news, or the animal lovers who'll be listening to this after the fact as well. I mean, we always pride ourselves on the partnerships, not only locally, but certainly internationally as well. This is something that we've partnered up with some folks in Texas with, right?
Yes. In Texas, where we were years ago with cats and struggling with just more than there were homes ready for them, they're still struggling with dogs down there. And they have a lot of dogs consistently coming in, and just not enough adopters for them all. And so we were approached by some people down in shelter medicine involved with El Paso Animal Services. And they are working with the Bissell Pet Foundation, and they have been flying dogs to all other parts of the country. And they're really just saying, we know there's not enough homes in our community. We're going to move some of these dogs out of our community and transport something that has been happening for a number of years. Obviously, the last year and a half, it's been more challenging. Definitely bringing dogs over the border has been more challenging. We used to try to really reach out across the border to Michigan, to some of the Michigan shelters that needed assistance and help out there. That hasn't been an option. But when we were approached about the Texas transport, it was a little bit overwhelming, because they were talking huge numbers. They were talking about 80 dogs, and that's a lot for a shelter of our size. But we knew the situation they were in, and we know that shelters have helped us with cats, and we know that we have adopters who want dogs. And we thought, we have to help make this happen, because it's going to benefit the people in Texas. It's going to benefit the people here who are hoping to give a great home to a dog, and who have lots of love to give and are just trying to find someone to adopt. So we said, we're going to do it. We'll buy into it. Bissell is flying them up right to Windsor. We've reached out to a number of partner shelters in Ontario that we've worked with on other projects, and a number of them are going to be taking some of the dogs. So they'll be coming in and taking them to their shelters. But quite a few of them are going to be staying here in Windsor and Essex County. And we're really excited about that, and bringing these dogs here and giving them a new life, and really helping to ease the load a little bit on the shelters down in Texas.
And we wanted just to give a shout out to the entire group, the Bissell group. We've got a really cool clip to show the folks who are watching the live stream, and even listen in if you're listening to the podcast after the fact. So take a look at this.
I'm here in El Paso at El Paso Animal Services. They have an abundance of animals here, and so they need help moving a lot of the pets that are here.
What's really incredible about this week is that it is the largest testing and transport operation that's ever been done. And because of our incredible partners with the Bissell Pet Foundation and the Animal Rescue Corps, we are able to support the City of El Paso Animal Shelter in moving hundreds of pets to destinations where they'll find their forever homes.
They're doing a lot of on-the-ground work. We're testing every single animal going out to make sure there is absolutely no disease. We are working with the University of Florida with some of the best vets in the country and an amazing team here in El Paso.
This transport isn't just a transport. This transport means that a lot of the programs we put in place here in El Paso can finally be expanded. And we never had that opportunity because we were always at capacity or near capacity. So having this kind of reset of sorts will allow us to continue our programming in order to maintain that population that is best going to serve these pets, the staff, and our community.
Something like this is something I could only dream of happening, and to get this many people fighting for us is awesome. We cannot waste this opportunity. This is our chance for change, and we can't do that without you guys.
So this is really exciting, not only for the El Paso team, but for all of the animal shelters across the country that are taking pets from here. They're participating in this event to empower this shelter and lift them up, and it's really an incredible thing to be a part of.
And we've been very fortunate to have the support of all the organizations, the Bissell Pet Foundation, the Animal Rescue Corps, the University of Florida, to really come forward and let us know that we're not on this life-saving journey by ourselves. We got partners that believe in what we're doing and that are here for El Paso's pets. I'm just so grateful. I never knew this day would ever happen where we would have this amount of support and help get these pets a home, because that's what's most important.
We'll never get to a place where every pet has a home if we're not empowering the people that are caring for them. So we're here to support the El Paso Animal Services by just simply helping them to create a sustainable program.
There we go. Should know by now. Unmute the mic. It's a pretty awesome project to be a part of. I mean, to see these pets come into Windsor and then hopefully find their forever homes here or abroad in our partner shelters too. We definitely still need some fosters, right, for this particular project as well.
Yes, we are still looking for fosters, and like they were saying, this is really supporting each other and helping that community get to a point where they can implement new programs and help really make change. And it's such an exciting thing to be a part of. It's a little bit overwhelming because there's so many details to work out in a pretty short period of time. A couple of those are for sure. We need foster homes because the animals that are staying here in our community, we're planning to move very quickly into foster homes. We don't have space to keep them all in shelter, nor do we want to keep them all in shelter. We do want to observe them, make sure that everyone is healthy, everyone made the trip well. A lot of them are going to need some medical care, especially spay and neuter services. Some of them will come already spayed and neutered, but some of them are going to need those kind of things. There's a few medical cases that we've said we'll take on and help out with, that we have the capacity to assist with. But they do need foster homes. So if you go to our Facebook page, if you go to our website, you can find the link to sign up as a foster. Even if you've never fostered before, this is a great first opportunity. We do suggest, because they are coming from Texas, where there are some illnesses in the community that aren't as common here, your pets are just up to date on vaccines, because especially if you have dogs in the house, having those vaccines, those basic core vaccines on board is really going to make sure that your pet is healthy. If by some chance the pet that's coming in is carrying something, the people down there are great. They are working really hard to try to make sure that animals are healthy when they leave, and that they're sending animals that are going to be great companions and going to be healthy. But I mean, we're dealing with living creatures. It's the same thing when we put animals up for adoption. We try very hard. Our medical team works very hard. Our behavior team works very hard to make sure that we have advised the adopter of everything, that we've given them everything we know. But we don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get a cold tomorrow, and we don't know the same thing about a cat or an animal. And they can't tell us if, hey, I feel a little twinge here. So that can be really hard when you're a medical staff person trying to assess an animal. But our team are great. Our behavior and medical team work so hard to really give our adopters as much information as possible to help ensure that our animals are set up for a good future. And so we're excited about that. And if people are interested in fostering, they can be part of this. And if you can't foster, we need funds, and these things cost money. Bissell is amazing funding this flight. It's so generous of them to do that, but there's still costs involved, not just the vetting costs and the care costs, but things you don't even think about. Like, we need to make sure that we have collars and all those things for all these dogs that are coming. This is a large number. We need to purchase collars that we might not have on hand for the number of dogs that we usually have. And we also, just to help make sure that we can pay this forward and help the people in El Paso do this again, we're trying to send the crates back to them. So you saw the crates in the video. These are great airline crates that are helpful for transportation. We definitely don't need all of those here. So we're looking to be able to ship those back to El Paso, and there's some costs associated with that. So we're asking people, if you can't foster, consider making a donation to help be a part of this, what may be the biggest Texas rescue in Ontario. We were Googling, we're not quite sure. We can't say that with 100% confidence, but we could not find one bigger. So we're really excited about that. If it's not the biggest one, it's definitely one of the largest ones. Maybe back Hurricane Katrina, there might have been something larger, but definitely in recent years, this is one of the biggest ones that's been coming into Ontario. And we're so excited to be a part of it.
Very cool stuff. And what a great way to sort of, reach out across borders, right? During certainly unprecedented times too, to sort of support folks down south. And, make happy tales here in the Windsor, Essex area. So that website, like Melanie said, you can find out all the details, windsorhumane.org. You talk about unprecedented times, and that term has been used to death, literally, over the last 19 months. But, I mean, you and I were talking about, the border reopening and all that kind of stuff, and, COVID fatigue. It's been, like any other organization, a long 20 months, right, for the society as well. And folks may not be aware, but the medical staff, a lot of the admin staff were working from home when the pandemic first hit. But the medical staff, Dr. Kayla, her team, everybody was here, right? They were doing what needed to be done. And I think, there are some really good news stories to come out of sort of the first iteration of COVID in Windsor, Essex, for us anyways. Some of the positive things that we've seen on the pet front, we'll start with even the amount of people adopting pets using the online system that we have in place, but keeping those pets. You and I were talking about how many times we're both approached that, oh, you guys must be getting all the pets back. You must be getting all the pets because people are, quote unquote, going back to normal life. And that could not be further from the truth, I think, right?
Definitely. We're still seeing a lot of interest in adoption. And like you said, our team have been here every day. Like a lot of other essential workplaces that just had to keep going, our community's animals needed us, and we had to limit some of our services. Our spay neuter clinic closed for a little while, but it opened really as quickly as we possibly could, and just got back to doing it a slightly different way. And our adoptions closed for a short time, but very quickly we realized that this was not going to be a 2-week thing. So strange to think about that now, but realize that it's going to be longer, and we can't just keep these animals in foster. We need to get them into homes. And so how do we do this online? How do we adopt animals online? And looking at it, at first, when we were trying to say we needed to reduce our population a little bit, we were looking at what's called managed intake, and basically asking people to call and book an appointment before they bring someone in. And that was something that we'd been talking about, but it's a hard thing to implement. But we were able to do it because everyone got used to booking an appointment for everything. And the reality is it's been really helpful for us to be able to say, okay, you know what, we already have 10 cats being surrendered this weekend. If someone calls to surrender a cat, unless it's an urgent situation, the animal's sick and the owner can't care for them, or the owner's passed away and there's no family, of course those will take urgently. But when there's or a sick or injured stray cat, like those guys are going to be urgent and we're going to get those in. But if it's something that we can say, hey, can you hold on to them for a couple weeks? Give us a little bit of time so we can get the guys that are coming in this weekend already into homes, and then we'll have a great space available to give your cat a lot of space to be comfortable. And rather than trying to say, whoever walks in the door, we'll just pack them in. We did that for years, and it wasn't ideal for animals. And this managed intake has really just been helpful for the staff, because we know what's coming, we can manage what's here, and it lets us help move them out more quickly. Just as a perfect example today, someone called us because they were contacted by their municipality because they have chickens and ducks and didn't realize that they couldn't have chickens and ducks. And they called us and we were able to say, you know what, we're doing this huge transport on the 15th. We're going to need all our space available. Having 10 chickens is probably not going to be an ideal thing to have for the next week. But can we book you something just a few days after this is over? Then we'll be able to get them placed. And so that was fine with them. They were able to work with that. The bylaw officer will understand that they have an appointment booked, and it lets us have some breathing room for the animals and keep them more comfortable as well. So for animal shelters, I think we've really tried to say, what can we learn from COVID? And this time period has been challenging, and there's some things that we can't wait to change. But there's other things that we found are really beneficial, and the online adoptions have been really great. 2 years ago, I never would have thought that we would just be able to adopt animals online and send them home with people barely having a chance to meet them. But the reality is that's what our adoption counselors do. They try to match people with a pet that's going to be a good fit. And sure, the animal that draws their eye on the website is maybe like the animal when they walk into a shelter that reaches out through the kennel and they say, oh, I want that one. But it's a little easier online for our adoption counselors to say, actually, just like today, someone had contacted us about wanting a certain cat because he just liked the look of the cat and he thought it checked all his boxes that he wanted. But we realized when we looked at what he was looking for in this cat that they were not a good fit. It just wasn't a great match, and we figured we didn't think the cat would be happy. We ultimately didn't think he would be happy. So we talked to him and said, okay, let us find a cat that checks the boxes that you're looking for and will be a good fit for you. And sure enough, we found a cat. He's excited. He's coming to pick her up tomorrow. And he hopefully will have a cat that's a better fit for him. So it's really enabled us to work with people, help match them with an animal that's going to hopefully be a good fit for their household. And sometimes it's not. I think people always say, oh, but I would never return them. Well, it's like dating. You don't marry every person that you go on a date with. And sometimes that's just the case, that you get an animal home and realize that, oh, this maybe wasn't the best choice. And then they come back and we know more, and they can go and find a home, and we can give them that information and say, hey, you know what? We know that this cat does not like other cats. He should be in a home with no other cats. He loves dogs, but he does not like cats. And then we can make sure that the next adoption works better. And then we can find that first person a pet that is going to kind of be a better fit for them. So some of those things are hard for us working in shelters sometimes to accept. Sometimes we even look at returns as, oh, we failed and it didn't work out. But the reality is it doesn't mean that we failed. It means that it wasn't a great fit, and we're going to work to find a better fit for both parties the next time. So those have been really interesting. I think we we know that the community wants to come in, and we know the community loves to just be able to see the animals. So we're working on ways to do that. But the reality is we are going to be keeping the primary focus for people who are actually looking to adopt using that online platform. And we'll have, once we open, we'll have some tablets and computers here where people can actually do that paperwork and register. But it also gives a little bit of a fairer opportunity to someone who may have to work or may not be able to get here, but really wants to kind of be first in line to adopt them. It really has worked quite well. And so it's been a learning process, and there's been some bumps along the road, but our community has really been great, and it's really been exciting to see how everything's embraced it, and really how many great things have happened. And like you said, everyone wanted a pet during COVID, and it was interesting because the first few weeks, everyone wanted to foster. We had so many, just like every shelter, we had hundreds of people wanting to foster. And it was nice because people kept saying, oh, are you worried they're not going to keep them? And we said, no, they're wanting to foster. They're recognizing that they want to bring an animal in temporarily, and that's why they're offering to help. And then as time moved on, people started actually changing and saying they wanted to adopt and looking for more of that long-term thing. And we had so much interest in adopting. It was crazy how for some of late last year, we would put an animal online that normally we'd say, this animal is going to take forever to get adopted. Like we had a pigeon with one wing. Like that is not a highly adoptable animal, but got adopted in, I think it was a day. And
that's awesome.
It's just, we were blown away by the interest, and it's toned down a little bit on that. I think if we put the pigeon up now, he might have to wait a few days to find something, but there's still a lot of interest, especially dogs, which is why we have the capacity for sure to bring in some numbers from Texas. But I think there's a lot of alarmist propaganda out there saying
for sure
that people are returning animals in droves, and all of these pandemic animals are getting returned. And that's just not the case. It's not. And shelters have really worked with people to try to make animals a good fit. And the numbers out there, and I've been on calls with shelters across North America, and the company that provides our software actually provides a software for hundreds of shelters. And they've crunched the numbers and looked at it and said, no, our shelter numbers are still lower than they were in 2019. For sure, they're higher than 2020. Everybody was tightening down and really trying to limit their intake as much as they could because staffing levels were lower. You had to really distance. There was so much unknown. But the numbers from this year are between those two. They're not above 2019. So we can't say there's this flood of animals being surrendered into shelters across North America. So we're not seeing that. But that being said, I think we have to recognize that this time period has been challenging in a way because a lot of people did get animals, and it was during a time where for dogs, it was really hard to socialize them. Usually I'll recommend to people getting a puppy, take them to the grocery store, stand in front of the grocery store, let them meet every possible person they can. They're not going to meet a lot of other animals at the grocery store, so illness isn't as much of an issue with puppies, but they're going to meet people with canes. They're going to meet young people, old people. That's how you socialize a puppy. And you couldn't do that last year. There just weren't that many opportunities to meet with people, and you could arrange them, and there was ways to do it, but a lot of people were hunkered down, and animals were staying home with them. And so a lot of those pandemic puppies weren't getting socialized. A lot of the animals that people had already even were getting used to having someone around all the time. And that can lead to separation issues in dogs where they get stressed when the person leaves and then sometimes can engage in destructive behavior. Veterinary clinics a lot of them were shut down. A lot of them had to limit hours and really facing a challenge of limiting some of their services because it was harder to do it curbside at the same time that so many people wanted to get new animals and get them in. But that meant that animals didn't necessarily get in for that early wellness care. They might not have been able to get in for vaccines, get them spayed and neutered, and those kind of things can lead to health issues. And so those are some of the things that we're monitoring, that shelters are watching closely for, anticipating that we are going to see some pets coming in who are more under socialized, some dogs coming in the 1 to 2 year range who are a little more under socialized than we might normally see as a higher percentage. And that's something that we're looking at working on and trying to figure out how to help people help their pets adjust, and how we can support our community. The wellness services, we've started offering wellness services. We recognize that people couldn't access those services, and sometimes it's a financial issue that people were laid off, people had more limited income, especially if their jobs were impacted, and just getting in was one challenge, but finding the funding to do that was another one. And so our wellness services are going to help people stay with their pets, keep their pets in their household.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like it frustrates me sometimes that, and I get, they look for the negative, right? Sometimes. And it's like, I would love to see stories about, personally, in, a little bit of investigative community journalism to have, I'd love to hear about how maybe a pet has benefited somebody who had mental health issues during the pandemic, or was able to provide companionship to a senior who was having to shelter in place over the last 19 months. Like, to me, those are the stories that really resonate on, a couple of different levels. But yeah, I think, there's been so many great stories coming out of the pandemic to say that people are starting to realize, hey, like, family members are also four-legged, or sometimes two-winged friends, or in a pigeon's case, one wing, right?
Yes.
One thing I wanted to talk about too is, something else that we started a couple months ago. Really cool clip to show folks who are listening and, watching this in the YouTube channel after the fact. We had this really cool initiative that we launched at Devonshire Mall about a month ago, and it was a big success. Take a look.
Well, I was taking her out on Sunday night to do her business, and it was dark out, and the fireworks started, and she bolted. She was gone faster than I could think. And right from there on, for 39 hours straight, I walked up and down streets trying to find her. The other night, the lady came to my door and she says, I think I have my dog, your dog, in my garage. She won't come out. And I says, yeah, she's scared of loud noises. So I followed her to her house. Yeah, that was her, and it was a really great reunion. And I says, now that I got her back, I'm getting her microchipped. That's the first thing I'm doing when I get her back.
Good job, Stella. Good job, Stella.
I think they're very important. I've had previous pets that I got from the Humane Society, and they're beautiful pets, and they're treated well there until they go to their new forever home. So, yeah, I fully believe in the Humane Society and all the work they do.
Right here. You can just open the door for me. I can. Thank you. Here we go, Stella. We're on good. Oh, can I see it? Come back. I promise you come back. Come on up. Can you get to the front of this truck, please? Perfect. Perfect. What do you have today?
Welcome home, Fancy.
There we go. I'll mute my mic again. To be a part of that, and even to talk to some of the folks, including that lovely lady, Jerry, who I had a chance to talk to and sort of interview for us too, there's so much love for the organization, right? And when you think about the simple things that we can offer for folks, to give them sort of peace of mind, it blew my mind. I mean, you told me before the fact, you're like, it's going to get busy. And I'm like, oh yeah, no problem, but I couldn't believe the lineup of cars we had, especially in the morning run too. But when we're able to have those drive-through microchip clinics, and I think it's so crucial, because I think generally speaking, everybody was very positive, and it was something I think that was needed, right? I mean, there's some feedback from folks that I know you received as well, that people were like, this was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. I love watching that video, because it is just it's so nice. It's so nice that we were able to offer it. Our microchip clinics are always one of the most popular things we do. We've had them here, and people sometimes wait a long time for their animal to come in, and because they know that microchip is their pet's ticket home. It's a lifetime identification. It's permanent. They can't lose it like a collar. And it is a way to make sure that, one, their pet is identified, and also that their pet can get home if they're lost. And there's lots of stories out there about pets coming home after years, cats that get lost and then identify them through a microchip and are able to get them back to people who love them. So for sure, it is something that is a nice service to be able to offer. But I think partly where I look at it is even beyond that, and being able to offer that to the community and provide that support. I think that makes me so proud of our team, because everyone pulled together. This was a brand new thing. We had never done a drive-through microchip clinic. We've never really done any kind of drive-through event. That's not what we've done. But everyone wanted to be a part of it. Everyone was really excited about it, and we're saying we're going to make this happen. And we knew it was going to be busy, but it was the first time we'd done it. We didn't know how. We'd seen shelters in the States that had done it. We hadn't done it ourselves, so it was hard to know what to expect and how to what exactly we were going to need in terms of people. And I remember standing there and looking at the line of cars, and it was such a long line of cars. People were wonderful; they were so patient, but it was a long line at one point. It was snaking around the mall and getting close to the road. It was very long. And I thought, okay, we have to get another team of techs, because the reality is that was kind of where we were getting a bit of a bottleneck. That took a little bit more time than we expected, because the techs have to scan the animal, make sure they don't have a chip already, restrain them properly, and then the process of inserting the chip is really quick. So it wasn't that we needed another veterinarian. We needed more techs to get those animals ready for the veterinarian to come over and just do that microchip insertion. So I'm standing in the mall parking lot and taking people's payment and calling a couple of our techs. And I called one of our techs who's on maternity leave and said, hey, what do you think about coming in and volunteering for the day? And she said, oh, I'm getting my hair cut for the first time, but I'll be there as soon as I'm done. And she raced over and did it. And another tech who I called and said, hey, are you available? She was off that day. She didn't tell me this till later, but her friend's wedding was that day, and she had plans arranging to get ready for the wedding. But she said, no, I'll come out, I'll help. She didn't miss the wedding. I promise. Just so you don't think we're terrible. She just missed. She came for the morning. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure had thought she was going to paint her nails or do something else, and instead she's like, no, I want to help. I want to be part of it. And they just came out and said, yeah, I want to be there. And they made a big difference, because we did have a bit of a backlog, and when those two showed up and kind of added an extra team, we were able to burn through the rest of the line. We got everyone through really quickly, and then the afternoon was a little bit lower, which always happens at our microchip clinics. The last half is always the least busy. Tip for anyone who's coming to our microchip clinic, come in the last half, because the wait is always shorter than in the first half. It was really great to see people's openness. Last year we started our first ever rabbit microchip clinic, and we don't know anybody that does microchip clinics for rabbits, but we thought, you know what, we microchip all our rabbits at the Humane Society. Rabbits do get out of people's yards. People take them outside. They maybe get away when you're not paying attention, and a microchip, just like a dog and a cat, is a way to get them home. So we did a rabbit microchip clinic, and it worked well. So this microchip clinic was for dogs, cats, and rabbits, and we did have a few rabbits that showed up. So it's great to have a team that's open to learning from other shelters and even teaching other shelters, doing some things that they can learn from. We've had other shelters ask us how it worked, what suggestions we have, wanting to do their drive-through clinics in Ontario. So it really is a really nice thing to be a part of, and to really be able to work together with people who are also trying to make a difference. And then when the community is supportive, and people were so wonderful. It was a choose your own price event, and we didn't know how it was going to go, like were people going to come through and pay $1. it's easy when you talk about being cynical, and sometimes looking at media stories tend to look at the negative side sometimes. I think that ends up being the expectation. But the reality is, there were people coming through and saying, "Oh, what's the usual fee?" And we'd say, "Oh, normally it's $20," and they'd hand us $40. It was awesome. Like, it was just really nice to see, and I think it was heartening that people appreciated this service and were wanting to help make sure it could continue.
You know, before we wrap up the hour, and it goes by so quick, you know, like
it always I said to Carrie,
right? It's like, I said to Carrie, she's like, "Who do you got on the show tonight?" And I said, "Melanie." She goes, "Oh, you guys are gonna be like that. It's gonna be it's just like the old days on CKLW." But you know, one thing I wanted to talk to our audience about, and certainly folks who are listening to this after the fact on Spotify or watching on YouTube, is the topic of investigations. This was something that it was relatively new to me coming in, working with the team. But I know this is something that's really embedded in our mission has changed a bit, but we wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on what's changed, you know, what we're responsible for, what we, you know, are looking forward to the future in that sense. But, you know, to kind of give people an understanding of, you know, what the big changes were, because even me coming in, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's really confusing, and I think has been hard for people to understand. And partially it's because a lot of it happened during this time when so many other things were in the news that getting that messaging out was really challenging for the government. But I guess, like you said, our mandate for years, our mission, we did investigations. Our officers were law enforcement officers. They were peace officers. They would be able to go out and investigate welfare concerns, lay charges, issue orders, do all those different things. Usually we did around 800 to 1,000 investigations a year. So quite a lot of investigations, and those would be anything from lack of medical care, lack of proper shelter outside, to some really significant cases like Justice, the dog whose mouth was taped up and found in a field. Just a wide range of issues. And we felt that was a huge, important service that we were offering to our community. And one of the things that people very often confuse is they think that the Humane Society and the OSPCA are the same, or at least that we're connected. And we're not. We are completely separate organizations. The Ontario SPCA is a provincial organization that previously had a delegated authority under the legislation provincially to enforce cruelty legislation, and they could subsequently delegate that authority to other shelters, to what they called affiliates. So these were shelters that had a relationship, but were not the same organization. We had different governance, different charitable statuses, different boards, and very different staff. So our officers would have OSPCA on their uniform, but that was not because they worked for the OSPCA or were paid by the OSPCA, but it was because their authority came through the OSPCA. So it was very confusing, of course, because our officers have OSPCA on them. So people think, oh, they're the OSPCA. And the reality is we represented that authority under the provincial law that the OSPCA had in our community, and they delegated that to us. And as I mentioned, we did 800 to 1,000 investigations every year. In 2019, the OSPCA decided to change their mandate and to withdraw from providing investigations. And that was something that I think a lot of affiliates that were doing investigations had some concerns about, because we felt like this was a service we wanted to continue to offer to our community, and they had reasons for doing it. There were some legislation concerns that were out there for sure, but I think we felt that it was something that was a really important part of the services we can offer to our community. We were offering 24-hour services, and if there was an investigation that was needed in the middle of the night, we were able to respond 24 hours a day and be able to offer that. And so essentially the OSPCA withdrew in June of 2019. The Windsor Essex County Humane Society and a number of other humane societies worked for the rest of 2019 with the government. So instead of the government delegating that authority to the Ontario SPCA, who delegated it to us, they gave it to us directly to continue to provide those services in our community. We did that to the end of 2019. But then in 2020, the government decided that that was too much of a patchwork and wasn't able to service the entire province. And it's a valid point when some communities had different services and they wanted to try to make it consistent. So in January of 2020, the Provincial Animal Welfare Service took over all of that enforcement across all of the province. So now no humane societies, not the OSPCA, no humane societies offer those investigation services anymore. It's all done provincially, can also be done by the police under the legislation, but typically when you're dealing with situations of not obtaining medical care or proper shelter and dog houses and things like that, those the police do leave to the Provincial Animal Welfare Service, and they tend to deal with more cases of violence or criminal code type matters. And so that's still a work in progress. I think there have been challenges with the new system. There are some areas where we continue to try to advocate to make that new system better. Dogs in hot cars is one perfect example. That is an urgent matter, and the provincial system is not really set up as an emergency response system. So those calls are now really being directed to 911, but the police haven't all received training on when you can remove an animal and what is the signs of distress. And so it really is a way to, it really is kind of confusing for everyone. And people have sometimes frustrations because they don't know who to call. And so we try to really provide those services to the community and help to guide them to the person to call or the agency to call and give them that information, because there are some times where there's issues that are covered under a municipal bylaw, and maybe that is a municipal issue that a humane society can deal with through a bylaw. Maybe it's something that the Ministry of Natural Resources deals with if it's a wildlife question. If the Provincial Animal Welfare Service is having a challenge, maybe the call center didn't direct someone appropriately, we can talk to them and say, hey, give them a call back and make sure you provide this information, and then that will allow them to have an investigator check it out. So we still support the new system. As I mentioned, we still are working hard to try to work with the government, support the government. We take in animals that are removed. We care for animals that are part of investigation sometimes, and many shelters do. So we continue to provide that because the government can train law enforcement officers and they can provide those services, but it would be redundant for them to set up systems of shelters across the province. Shelters are already there. We've been caring for animals. And so when animals do need to be removed, even in some larger numbers, there's been some larger removals that have happened recently in other parts of Ontario, when shelters have stepped up and really just made it happen to try to give those animals a safe place to land. So it's definitely a work in progress. I think the new system is not perfect, but we are continuing to try to work with the government and help to make it better.
I think that's some great clarification too, right? Because I know we do get a lot of questions sometimes on Facebook, or people might have, again, a misconstrued concept of, sort of things prior to the change. So thank you for explaining that too. Just before we wrap it up this hour, I wanted to ask you, your thoughts on 2022 and beyond for the shelter and the folks and the community. How do you feel? What are your thoughts on the outlook for the society and where things are going?
We are really excited about where things are going. I think we've made such progress over the last 10 years. We've been able to implement some really groundbreaking programs, and I think there's so much more we can do, and a lot of different services and new types of services that we can offer for the community. It's a little bit nerve-wracking at times because we're not getting in as many of the really simple to adopt animals. They still come in. Definitely, we'll still occasionally just get a a young dog that people had allergies to, and wanted to make sure that if they had to rehome them, that they trusted us to make sure that we would find the best home. They still come in, but what we found, especially in the last year, is that those easy to adopt animals often are very easy for an owner to adopt. If you think about it, and if in the last 6 months, if you had a 6-month-old puppy that you had to rehome because your child had allergies and you didn't realize it, it's pretty safe bet that if you posted on Facebook that you needed to find a home because your son was allergic, you'd have 5 friends that would say, oh, I'll take them, because everyone was trying to adopt. So we were finding that some of our numbers of dogs coming in were a little bit lower, but we were still getting those more challenging cases. And so it can be hard because when they're challenging, it does mean that sometimes you're dealing with animals with behavior issues or medical issues. And so it's been a learning curve, but I think there's still a lot of room for us to help our community. I just spoke to someone today who had to surrender her dog because she had to move in with her dad, and it was a situation where he lived in a condo. And while landlord-tenant situations, you can't have no pets clauses, condos are different. And she just couldn't bring her dog, and she was heartbroken. And she said she felt like she abandoned him, and that I think she felt like she was a bad person. And I explained to her that that's why we're here. We are here to make sure that your pet that you just couldn't care for factors beyond your control had a safe place to land. And we're going to take care of that pet. We're going to find them a great home. And so those services are going to continue to happen. But I think like we've talked about, there's other things that we're going to continue to grow and continue to build and make our shelter better and really offer more to the community.
It's an exciting time, and I think it's just going to continue to get better and better, pandemic or no pandemic. And the support that the community throws behind the society is awesome to see. So thank you for everything. I very fondly reminisce sometimes about all the wacky shenanigans we had on Pet Picks when we were doing the TV, and now we get to do kind of a virtual one, which is cool. But it's so great to be involved with an organization that has such a good connection to the community, and you get to see the change in folks and the family dynamic that sort of grows from finding these forever homes. So thank you for everything. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I know I talk to you every day, but it's good to have you on the show and, kind of illuminate with folks who, follow along as well. So I appreciate you spending some time with me tonight.
Yeah, it's great. I have such fond memories of standing on downtown Olette with you waiting to shoot when we were waiting to go live. And I always said I didn't want to be a viral video on YouTube, so
right?
we had to avoid that. But yeah, it was. There were some really. I still remember some of the animals that we adopted out through that, and we had some really good times doing that. And it's great that you're part of the Humane Society team now. I think there are so many exciting things that you're helping to make happen, and I'm really excited about the future. So thank you so much for helping us share the information out there.
Oh God, I have. It's a fantastic opportunity, and Carrie and I were sitting at the table the other night. She's like, when we first started getting together, Carrie and I back in 2014, and she started watching. Her parents used to watch CTV all the time, and she never did. And then she would, the one night when we first started dating, we were doing a pet segment, and I think it was. I don't think a dog peed on me, but I think it almost did. It might have happened because it came close a lot of times, like the stuff people didn't see on camera. But I remember Jim was like cracking up, and I always used to say to you, remember, like, if we get Jim to laugh, it's a good segment, right? And she's like, you were like really into the dogs. I'm like, yeah, because like all the animals that we would bring in, I don't think there was even when that one time we brought that ferret, and Christy Bizarre was like, what? Like she was shooting us, and she's like, what is this thing? It's like, I think all the animals were just such good souls, and it was just a pleasure to have them on. And just to really quickly, one of the cool things is I remember the one time we had the gala, and we actually auctioned off a spot for folks to join us on Pet Picks, and I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna pay to be on TV. But lo and behold, we had a family come on, and it was awesome, and it was just a lot of fun. So when full believer when things come full circle. So it's a real blessing. So thank you.
Yes, it's great to work with you again.
Okay, have a great rest of the weekend. I will see you back on Monday, and certainly I think when new stuff comes up, we'll try to slot you in when we can on the here on the program too. So thank you so much.
Sounds great. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thanks, Melanie. Melanie Coulter, our executive director from the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. Like Melanie said, just a dedicated team of professionals and doing some really cool stuff. The Texas dog, I guess, migration. The influx of Texas dog is really, really cool. And you're going to have to follow the Humane Society on Facebook over the next little bit. Find out a little bit more about how you can get involved with that too. And it's really cool because it's all sorts of dogs too that are coming from El Paso and the Texas area as well. So happy to have her on the show. Some amazing things on the horizon too. Have a great rest of the weekend, folks. We appreciate you commenting in the feed. If you need any more information, you can always email me direct or message me on Facebook as well. And don't forget, we're back again next week with a couple of great shows here on the program. So thanks for joining us and have a great weekend.